on the first cruise from Brisbane to Brisbane on the Pacific Aria. It was a nice little boat and a bunch of good people were on board. We set sail out of Brisbane and went under the Gateway Bridge as usual. The Pacific Aria is a small ship. It's small enough to turn around in the Brisbane River without a fuss. The main area where the pool is has 2 spas. Obviously this area allows children and a number of the children occupy the pools. They, however, don't occupy the spas that much because one of the spas is set to a very hot temperature, which is the one you can see right now. As for the spa just across, it is set at a cooler temperature and people jump in that quite often. The adults pool is very small. I would call it more of a plunge pool than anything else. On a longer cruise, I think this pool would fill up quite quickly and unfortunately there wouldn't be a lot of room. As for the drinks on board, they were actually okay priced, a little bit expensive, and sometimes the alcohol volume in those drinks was very light. However, the service was good. The entertainment was quite good.
My Irish great-grandmother sailed to Australia and she fell pregnant to a Norwegian sailor, which I think we've all done, we've all been there.
The comedian was funny, the hypnotist was, well, unethical but funny, and the Velvet Rope musical, well, it was okay. I'm not one who likes musicals, so for me, I could watch it, but I didn't really enjoy it so much. The Dome nightclub, well, most of the P&O ships have a nightclub at the front or at the bow of the ship. This was no different. The Dome nightclub on the Pacific Aria was just a smaller version of the Dome nightclub to that on the Pacific Dawn. It still had relatively the same music and the same sort of seating arrangement where you had a little bit more posh seats away from the dance floor and a reasonable bar there. The curtains can be pulled around so you can create a private sort of atmosphere if you so wanted. As for the food on the ship, it had the Pantry. Now, this replaced the buffet restaurants traditionally available on P&O. For some, this was not an improvement. For others, they thought it was great. I didn't think this was an improvement at all. The quality of the food served in the pantry was at best 3-star, more like tuck shop food that you'd expect at a local high school. The Indian, the Chinese, the Mexican were all fine, but they weren't authentic in any way, and quite often the meat was way overcooked, the curry sauce was very watery. In my opinion, the Mexican food was by far the best, and it was limited to tacos and wraps. There was also a small sandwich bar and a dessert bar. You could get fruit at any time as well, but that fruit was limited to watermelon, rockmelon, and I think apple. The Pacific Aria Waterfront restaurant is the main made-to-order restaurant. It serves very good lunches and dinners, both of which have an entree, or a starter as they call it, and a main and a dessert. The desserts are of varying quality. The quality of the food wasn't up to the standard on even the Pacific Dawn. Perhaps this was because it was a short cruise and it was the first time this boat had left on a 3-day cruise from Brisbane. While we enjoyed this cruise, we won't be catching a cruise on the Pacific Aria again. There was too much disorganisation among staff, and it seemed like all restaurants were always all fully booked, despite there being several vacant tables throughout the entire evening. This included Angelo's, Dragon Lady, and the Waterfront restaurant. The fact that we had to get buzzers and line up for such a long time to get dinner with no guarantee of a time, that was really difficult to stomach, given that the bones were all there for a great experience in all the dining rooms. It just seemed like the staff weren't up to the usual training standard of other ships on the P&O and Princess cruise lines. Also, the layout of the ship was quite confusing. Also, there are a number of other little things like the lifts always breaking down and failing. The cruise ship, not as good as, say, some of the other cruise ships on the P&O line. I just didn't feel that the same level of love was put into this ship as on the other P&O cruise ships. So for this reason, we won't be cruising on Pacific Aria again. In saying that though, I'm not saying don't cruise on it, I'm just saying that there are other options.